to another edition of Deportes Nation. Today, our Deportes Nation, the soccer podcast. I'm Alex Parra. It's always an honor, a pleasure to be with you. You can see him here. My partner in crime is what I've decided to call him. We welcome in Don Victor Araiza. First of all, Victor, good day, good evening, good night. How are you?
Good evening, good night, Alex. Obviously, the time of day when we're recording this, but maybe good morning, depending on when whoever's listening to this is listening to this. Maybe it might be noon, any side of the world. But always a pleasure to be on here at Deportes Nation and speak of the beautiful game. Again, plenty to speak about now. MLS season's right here, and yeah, and that's exciting. Yeah,
a lot of topics. We'll give you a quick rundown, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Enemies, maybe there's some enemies out there that don't agree with everything we say. We will be talking MLS. We'll talk about.
They listen.
Hey, as long as you listen, that's what's important. We need the ratings, so thank you, Victor. We'll talk about the Houston Dynamo, a fan event that we were present at just in the last couple of days. The team heading off to play St. Louis here, and also the home opener that's coming versus Kansas City. Yes, the home opener already of the 2024 season. We'll also talk about Hector Herrera. Apparently he's in Europe, they say. Will he be ready for the season opener? I doubt it. Will he be ready for the first couple of games of the season? We don't know yet, so that's something we'll talk about. We'll talk about the Houston Dash. Speaking of Europe, the Spaniard, Profe Alonso, finally got to Houston. We had the opportunity to chat with him, and we'll talk about that event. We'll also talk about, and I want to get into this a little bit, Victor, the new alternate jersey for the Dynamo. I need to be educated about a lot of things, so that'll be one of the topics for today. We'll also talk about the CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup coming to the United States and Houston in particular, and I'm interested, Victor, to see how the MLS will start this season. Why don't we start with that topic? Is the MLS still today, for this season, the world revolves around Messi? Is that basically the story that everyone's going to follow, regardless of what may be happening elsewhere?
Well, they're starting the league with Inter Miami, so does that answer the question for you? Most of the games on Saturday, but right before then, a few days before, Wednesday, the big home opener. Nope, it ain't the MLS Cup champions Columbus Crew opening at home. It's not even the runners-up LAFC. It's Inter Miami, who didn't make the playoffs in 2023. They'll be opening at home against Real Salt Lake. And, of course, it's Messi and friends, Luis Suarez, Jordi Alba, Tata Martino as the manager. And, of course, that is one of the big stories of the season. And if you're looking at betting lines, the odds-on favorite to win the entire thing.
And I think that has to be right. I don't blame the MLS. I know there's other storylines. I know there's other teams that are up and coming. There's not yet a new franchise team, a new, forgive me, not franchise, but expansion team, rather. That'll be
another club, yeah. That'll be next year.
Next year with San Diego, so that's not a storyline. But I think while you've got Messi here, arguably the best planet in the history of the sport, you have to ride that. And ride that as far as the Apple broadcast, as far as the attention that the league receives. Not so much domestically, but maybe internationally. And I think that's part of the play of what Don Garber and company have in mind, Victor.
It has to be. I mean, he's the biggest star in the sport in the world. Any league he'd be playing in, he'd be, his fans would be fans of that team. There's a reason why they did this world tour, and everywhere you go, everywhere you see videos from all around the world, the Inter Miami jersey is now, it's famous. It's even if it's, if they're replicas, if they're pirated, we put it that way, knockoffs. But that's the worldwide appeal that Messi and of course some of the other guys, Luis Suarez, Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets, the ex-Barcelona stars bring. They've had some South American signings too, but obviously Messi is the big focal point, and they only have him for a certain number of years. I mean, this is obviously year 2 of the Messi experiment, that we want to call it that, or era, and this may only be going for maybe one more year, depending on how this goes, the run up to the 2026 World Cup. So yeah, you have to make the most out of this. You have to take the most out of this opportunity. But there is a lot of criticism, right, between the authentic or just the longtime MLS fans, how much attention they're getting. Is the league bending over backwards with rules, roster rules to accommodate them? There's, again, side stories here with the U.S. Open Cup and MLS involvement in that. Obviously, the referee situation as well. They don't have an agreement in place, and the league is about to kick off, and I think we'll see replacement reps here. But again, all this revolves around big business, right? And that's that the league is making printing money with Lionel Messi being part of the league, and everybody wants a piece.
Everyone wants a piece, and in many ways, I don't blame the league for doing that. Now, let's localize this a little bit. The Dynamo have yet to face Messi at home, and it's not in the cards for 2024 either yet, at least as far as the regular season, Victor.
No, they faced them last year. That was their chance.
U.S. Open Cup in Fort Lauderdale.
Well, no, before that, in the MLS season.
Correct, but before Messi.
Before Messi.
Yes.
But it was part of the 2023 season. So as far as the schedule rotation, they already got their chance, right? Because they're in the East, Dynamo are in the West. So every 2 years, ideally, that's how you would rotate those dates. In this case, they don't face them this year at all. But last year was when they faced them at home. The year before that's when they faced them away. And again, they got an extra there with the Open Cup final and going over there and getting some of those ratings. But if we want to nitpick, we can say that hey, had the Dynamo scored more goals, they could have hosted them in the League's Cup. But you're right, as far as MLS itself, they don't get to host them. And I've seen some criticism, Dynamo fans around the league as well. But with the way the contract has been scheduled, there's criticism, right? Well, I'm paying for MLS season pass. Indirectly, I'm paying for Messi, but he's not playing on my team. So, why should I contribute? But look, the Dynamo are getting a piece of this as well, too, I think, right? With
sure.
The way MLS is set up. It is a league that divides the earnings, right, between all the owners. So, in a way, indirectly, Ted Siegel, the Houston Dynamo, are getting a piece of the income from Messi.
Well, it's a single entity league, meaning that everybody has a percentage of it. Everybody wins, everybody benefits. Similar to the NFL, they're in business together. Yes, there's individual franchise fees, and somebody buys into that, and that's the long play for many of these owners. Hey, I'm getting in a league, my valuation keeps growing. I may have invested $300 million. But if I can get out in 10 years, get some attention for me, my family, my businesses, and walk away with $500 million, that's not bad business. I would jump into that. And you're right, everyone in some way has a piece of Messi. It's different than in other leagues, in other parts of the world where you're literally your own entity. Yes, you need each other in the league, but you benefit if you do well, if you sell tickets, if you sell more hot dogs and beers or tacos and tortas and aguas frescas, depending on what part of the world you live in. This is slightly different, but it's business at the end of the day, Victor.
Oh, it certainly worked that way for the former Dynamo owner,
sure,
Gabriel Brenner, and it's not crazy to say that that could work for Ted Siegel as well, the current Dynamo owner.
Why not? So, Victor, I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. We had the opportunity to be at the Shell Energy Stadium here in the last couple of days for a Dynamo member kickoff event. Great event. Let's start with that. Your thoughts about being there and seeing the fans' excitement about the upcoming season?
Yeah. First and foremost, like we said in our recap, which y'all can find Deportes Nation YouTube.
You can plug it, Victor. It's okay.
I'm always going to applaud these efforts, as many as they can do. I think there was maybe a Facebook group where I saw something about, it was a member, or it was supposed to be like a member-only event. It ended up being open to everybody. I hope so, because they need as many people as they can get. But I can get also if there was maybe some angst about it, maybe not if it was advertised as member-only, because I think there is some some privileges that the season ticket holders have, exclusivity, what have you, that they've lost over the years that, almost doesn't make it worth, to be a season ticket holder if you want to compared to previous years. But that's maybe that's diving into another conversation. Overall, like I said, I think these kinds of community events where you greet the fans, you need as many as you can get out of these things. Make new fans, have some TLC, tender loving care, with the current fans you already have. And again, I don't think there's enough of these events throughout the year, but more power to them that they got one done here out of the way, and hopefully we can see more of this community involvement.
And the players were there, Victor, which is also an important part. I love seeing Coach Ben Olsen address the fans that were present. You're right. I got a positive vibe. Now, I don't want to sound negative in what I saw and what I didn't see, but I didn't see more than maybe 2,000 fans, and I'm being very generous in that number. I know it was a cold, blustery is a better word. It was a cold, windy day. Let's leave it at that. And it seemed that if there's a surge, pun intended here, of support, that you would have more people. Maybe it was the day, maybe it was the competing sports
the landscape.
The landscape with many
with UT, that day.
Other things going on that day. There was a Roughnecks event, by the way, from the new UFL. So was it an okay event? Yes, it was great to see it. The people that were there, some long-time fans, some new fans, were excited about it. Literally a week before the opener, you judge it by the numbers, and it was a very small crowd. Relative to any other numbers, is that enough? And if that's the fan base of season ticket holders, I'm thinking ahead for the 24th of February. Will that be a sellout? I don't want to get ahead of myself, but if that's an indication, I'm not sure.
Well, it's not. It's not going to be a sellout. Let's be honest, because everything we've seen up to this point, last year included, there was no sellouts. I don't think there is a reason to think there will be one. But that has a lot to do, again, with these kinds of efforts. Look, Alex, this used to be almost an annual appointment, right? Beginning of the year, you got to meet the team event. You have an open practice. Again, these are traditions that have gotten lost over the years, that reasons why people sort of walk away from the team, because there hasn't been that connection with the fans over the years, not as strongly. Sometimes this meet the team event is during the season. Sometimes it's at the end of the year. Again, the end of the year award ceremony had gotten scrapped from the previous years. I call it an end of year celebration because, again, maybe the club saw it as, well, we didn't win anything. We don't want to remind people that we didn't win anything, so we're just not going to have it. The players don't want to take part in it. The coaches don't want to take part in it after a failure of a season. But again, these are things that are important to the fans. They don't. Win or lose, those things matter. But to the diehards, right? They're there to support regardless, right? And I think when you take some stuff like that away, then it's not hard to see why people have left in droves. And again, for us, it was a unique perspective to be able to see some of that with the Dynamo. Go over across town to Rice Stadium and see it with the UFL, with the Roughnecks, and see how they see that importance, how they're having a Q&A before the season starts, with the head coach, with the director of football operations of the league. Again, I applaud Dynamo for doing it, but sometimes because of the repercussions of prior years, that's why there's not as many fans. And that's another reason why, on top of these events and maybe doing more of them, they also have to take this team out to the community. They got to go to schools. They got to go to local parks. They got to go to local events, because that's how bad the situation has gotten here in Houston.
And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes with this alternate jersey, with the thinking behind it. I'm going to read literally what the press release says about what this means, the Still Holden kit. I want to make sure I get it right. I'm an old man. Clearly, some of this is news to me, but we're going to explore that because I want to get it right. I want to give it its due justice, and we'll talk about this new purple jersey in just a few minutes here on the Deportes Nation, the soccer podcast. But let me go back to one thing here before we switch to the competition that's coming up versus St. Louis. the stadium, the fans. It's something that is yet to be seen, and you talked about it. I don't want you to get too ahead of ourselves, but I believe there was were there any sellouts last season, Victor, at the Shell?
At the Shell, yes. Not for the Houston Dynamo, and certainly not for the Houston Dash, which I want to throw in there, not to throw stones, but to just remind people that it's both teams that are struggling.
Yeah.
But we had the CONCACAF Gold Cup, the men's, right? Because we have the women's coming up as well.
Yeah.
Guatemala had a sellout game. El Salvador had a sellout game. You want to talk about Leagues Cup? Tigres Rayados sold out, and then they also had a friendly, which they sold out prior to them meeting in Leagues Cup. They had already sold out the friendly in a previous announcement. So there were sellouts there at the stadium. Just the Houston Dynamo weren't able to get enough people out there for their games.
So let me ask you.
And they had three home playoff games, by the way.
Well, let me ask you the direct question then: is not having a season opener sellout an issue relative to the season they had in 2023? They made the semifinals of the Western Conference. They were literally 2 matches away from an MLS championship. They won the U.S. Open Cup trophy. Literally, that's one of the best seasons in history for this team, rather relative to the past. And is the expectation that winning fills up that stadium? If that doesn't happen, is that a problem?
Well, I think we've heard the answer before, and I go back to when Chris Kennedy was the team president, because I think this goes across several eras, if you want to, and several management groups, right? And they've sort of clinged on to winning is going to get people back, and I don't think winning itself. I think we've seen it now; it's evidence. Winning itself is not the answer. Not by itself, right? Winning alone is not going to bring people back. And again, when we talked about this in the other episode with just the landscape of youth soccer in this area, but it's the same here with the fan engagement. I mean, there's repercussions from the past that you can't ignore, and you have to till the soil and win those people back. It's not just one of those, hey, it's a new era. It's new people in charge, and people are just going to come back in droves. That's not, one announcement or just, a few words like that isn't just going to get people back in the stadium. Again, you have to almost prove yourself again to this community the way that the first team had to do it, winning at Robertson, winning MLS Cups to gain permanency. Because remember, at that time, there was doubt that the team would stay permanently in Houston if they didn't find a stadium deal. And ironically, while they found a stadium deal that kept them in town, a lot of that stuff that got them the stadium in the first place, they kept going away from, which again, community engagement, being more connected to the fans, having more of these events, sticking to the product that on the field. I mean, or just sticking to the one thing that identifies the team, which is so crazy to me that, we hear about it, Dash and Dynamo, about the identity of the team. Well, the identity of the team should be soccer. It's as simple as that. And yet it's like they want to do everything but soccer. And I know we'll get to the jersey there in a little bit, but
we'll keep teasing it, but I think it's leading us in that direction, Victor.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the situation where the team is right now. Unfortunately, it's a current almost niche of fans here in town when you have such a big, sector of the population that already loves the sport as it is. They watch other leagues. They watch international games. They go to the NRG Stadium to fill up for friendlies or like we just mentioned, when there's games at Shell. Yeah. If it's El Salvador, Guatemala, Liga MX teams, I mean, they show up for that. But it's just the hometown teams can't seem to completely get them there. And the other thing I'll mention real quick, because I meant to mention this earlier with the other point. Another reason why these fan events have to be more often, I think, for a lot of people, this is the only chance they get, especially if they just join as season ticket holders or or they just decided to come out to one of these things to meet an Hector Herrera, to meet an Alberto Carrasquilla, and Herrera wasn't there on Saturday. Amin
Correct.
Pasi wasn't there on Saturday. Nelson Quinones was injured, wasn't there on Saturday, and I mentioned Herrera also, focusing on him because that's the star of your team. I think he's only shown up to one of these. Of course, injury has been part of the other ones. I think there might have been some international conflicts as far as with him playing with Mexico. There was one they did I think just last year at the Eleanor Tinsley Park in downtown, and again, Herrera wasn't there either. And they had a video of Herrera saying like, "Thanks for coming out," but that's not the same thing. And that's why I go back to that's why you have to have multiple of these, because for some fans it's the only chance they get to get an autograph. Because they don't always at the game, right? They're not always by the tunnel, or their seats are maybe in the second level or something like that. And for a lot of fans, this is their only chance to have that connection.
Victor, it's an election year. Whether it's Biden or Trump or somebody else or a third party, and by the way, I'm fully open to a third party candidate, ladies and gentlemen, just to make it official, in case anyone cares about my voice. There's nothing like shaking hands and kissing babies. And that wins you votes. That wins you support. I love, again, what I saw with Ben Olsen at the fan event. He was there talking to the crowd. He was pressing the flesh, if you will. The stars, whether it's Hector Herrera or others, need to do that. Is it an event like this? I understand injury. I understand he's rehabbing. I understand he's going through physical therapy. I want to be careful with my wording. And that's important. But he and others have to find a time to get in front of fans and know that they're part of something together. And that connection to me is huge. And that applies to any sport. There's some teams in town that do this really, really well, Victor. You were talking about what the Astros do in getting and engaging with fans.
Right. Well, it's almost an appointment now every year. Right before they head to spring training, they have the fan event, and it's an organized thing where they have different stations around the stadium. You get to take pictures with the trophy. Again, Houston, the Dynamo used to do this. They've maybe lacked consistency in hosting some of these events for one reason or another, right? And I think having these every year, Victor, continuing this tradition is important.
In fairness, that's what they did. Was it well attended? Was the stadium packed? No. But there were stations, there were players, there were interactions. Right. So, but I think we're both saying more of this is a positive thing.
No, exactly, and continuing this, not having it be a one-time thing or once every 2 years, or next year they switch it to, we'll do it during the season because the players don't have a time for it. No, there has to be, again, a strategy behind this, right? It says, and like you mentioned. Because I don't want to put it all on Hector Herrera. He's having, like you said, nursing an injury, even if he was doing it here in town. But somebody has to make it a point to say, our star player has to be at this event. And whether it's pick up the phone and call the owner, whatever you got to do to make it happen. But, these things have to happen to have that connection. They have to give it that importance.
Absolutely. Victor, let's switch gears and we'll get back to the fan engagement, the New Jersey. But let's talk a little bit about what's happening within 24 hours from the time we record, which is really the start of the season. Not the MLS season, but the start of competitiveness. The team traveling to St. Louis.
Yeah, they're in St. Louis for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I saw a quote out there, and I obviously the video's out there itself too. In the pre-match press conference, Ben Olsen saying there's no benefit to facing an MLS side in the first round, which maybe they were hoping, and Dynamo fans also were hoping for an international game. Just going somewhere different than facing somebody in the league, but no benefit. I have to disagree with that. I think there are certain things that play in their favor. Not going through immigration for 2 rounds, I think helps. Playing in, for as much as you want to maybe go to another culture or going to another country, you have great fields in MLS that, maybe if you go to Honduras or El Salvador or Panama, you may not get this. You won't get the same quality. If you go to the Caribbean, you won't get the same quality. I've heard Ben Olsen complain about the field at LAFC in the MLS Cup playoffs. I mean, these are the kinds of things that I don't see why there wouldn't be a benefit to it. And the other thing is, both of these teams are coming out of preseason. So if there's a time for the Dynamo to try to get one up on St. Louis, a team they faced twice last year. It's the only 2 meetings. And, St. Louis, I think, are probably the better side in this. And they get the first game at home. This actually might be a good opportunity to face them in preseason.
City Park in St. Louis, a soccer tradition there, finally getting an MLS team. And there's an interesting story that you were working on, Victor, that an ex-fan of the Dynamo gets an opportunity to face his team in many ways.
That's right. Houston native. Again, maybe another one that got away. A young player here in Houston that didn't find a way to the Houston Dynamo, even though he used to watch the team whenever Brian Ching was still on the team. I would imagine the Robertson years. Sam, and I think I'm hopefully saying his name right.
Give it a shot. I believe in you, Victor.
Sam Adeniran.
Okay.
Out in St. Louis. Again, a Houston native, and actually he didn't get to face Houston in the second match they had, which is the one play here at the show. But he had a good spell there with St. Louis where he started scoring on some goals. Did score against Austin FC, so that should endear him to some Houston fans. But again, I one of those stories, and once he gets into town next week, we'll get to talk to him hopefully. One of those stories of a player I think that was in the local community. Houston continues to create professional soccer players. They just happen not to play for the Houston Dynamo.
And I'm sure if we sat down with this young player and talked to others, there'd be a myriad of reasons for that. And we'll explore that here in the future on the Deportes Nation, the soccer podcast. Why, with all the local talent, are there very few sightings of players making the first team and staying on the first team consistently? So that's definitely something to look into. Victor, I'm going to jump around because of time. We've got to keep moving. Regardless of who does start for the Dynamo versus St. Louis in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, we know that one player will not be there, Hector Herrera. What's the latest that we know about Hector? He started in preseason. We talked to him. He looked good. And then we found out that he has an injury and would be traveling to Europe to begin his return, his physical therapy. It is now, 3 weeks later? And do we have official word of his condition, of what he's doing, of his timetable for return? Has anyone even asked? Out of sight, out of mind? To me right now, Victor, it's a very strange situation where we all know he's the superstar of the team, but the team's going to start the season without him. Is that going to hurt fans attending? Is that going to hurt their level of competitiveness? Does it matter yet? It's a long season.
It will be, maybe for the Houston Dynamo. It's funny because I saw the preview on CONCACAF.com and Hector Herrera is on the cover there, but not expected to be in this game. I believe Ben Olsen did an interview today, actually, as we're recording Monday, with Glenn Davis on ESPN Radio here locally in Houston. 2 things that came out of this one. I believe Herrera's back in the country, if I heard right. So obviously just not going to be playing. And maybe a reason, again, I don't know why these things don't get mentioned, but looks like some green card not issues, but Hector's one of the several players, like Bassi, in the process of getting his green card, and he does have a European passport. So that's another reason why he's in Europe, just like Bassi, who won't be available for this game tomorrow because he's out in France. He's also working on his green card. And obviously, for roster rules, that helps him be a domestic player, and that takes away the need for international slot. But that's another reason, right, that maybe why he's doing his rehab out there and not locally here in Houston. But of course, we don't get told these things because why would the club want to tell people the truth?
Well, and why the secrecy? I mean, Victor, let me put it this way. It appears at some point people don't even ask anymore. And all due respect to Glenn Davis for asking, but beyond Glenn Davis, who else is asking? And that may be part of the problem, that if no one's asking, does that mean they don't care? And it's really odd. Look, here's the reality. Local media, mainstream media, and I'm going to use that because we're not mainstream in any way, Victor, although we are in some ways. That's a whole cultural thing I'm referring to. We are more mainstream in Deportes Nation, bilingual by culture, than the so-called mainstream media. But that's another story for another day. Mainstream media right now are fixated on spring training. They literally have teams of reporters doing live shots multiple times a day from spring training, which is preseason and meaningless. And not one mainstream reporter is asking about Héctor Herrera. Maybe Telemundo, maybe TUDN, maybe a little bit because they kind of have to. But on the English side, Victor, it's just not happening. They're not covering Héctor Herrera. What does that tell you if you're leading this club and saying, here's my franchise player, he's been injured, and I bet you the mainstream media, by the way, I'm going to throw this in there, who we traveled and groveled to cover our team, don't even ask because they don't know or care. Is that fair?
I think yes, partly. I'll add to mainstream media in this case with Héctor Herrera, the Mexican media, because they're usually on top of it with injuries and things like this, insights. Having sources, and obviously, the several outlets with big viewership that they have down there. I've seen little to nothing coverage on Héctor Herrera, who's supposed to be a national team player or at least in the national team pool. Very little reported on his injury. And that shows you the interest even on just him as a player now that he has by being in MLS or being with the Houston Dynamo. And again, it's part of the media relations that they have to work on. But we've talked about several of these things. It doesn't help not being constantly open. Doesn't help. Again, not trying to nurture media relations, and I think that's the way they like it. That's the way they want it. They don't want criticism.
Well, they like every team, in fairness, they want to control the narrative as much as they can. They would prefer people to talk about the press release, and that's good. That's important to get out their message. Come fans, fill up the stadium. We're doing well. Let's do this.
To be fair,
every team does that.
Right. I'll just add this. It doesn't, in essence, maybe fall on us as well as media members to, do the footwork, right, and go get the information, and it does get tedious at times. Look, I've done it. I'll tell you, Alex, I've done it for free for a big part of my career because I was trying to go out there and make a name for myself, and but that's almost the kind of effort it takes to cover soccer in the United States. Particularly in MLS and certainly the Houston Dynamo, right? And that's part of it. Like you said, there's funding to cover the Astros in spring training. There might not be the same funding to cover the Houston Dynamo, and that's another reason why
no.
where it is.
No, forgive me. There may not. There isn't. Not there may not be. There isn't the budget to travel to St. Louis to carry this game. There isn't the budget to go to the U.S. Open Cup final. That had to be facilitated by the club. Please, no sour grapes. Yeah. So to follow up, no. Local mainstream media do not have the budget to cover soccer. That's a fact, Victor.
No, and look, I thought about it. I mean, because I've done these sometimes because I want to be there. But
sure.
But then you think about it. What do you get back in return, right? If I'm gonna go to St. Louis so Ben Olsen can look at me funny and answer my question with a half-hearted effort, then what was the point of even being there, right?
There isn't.
I'm just giving you my perspective from it. So I don't mind the St. Louis media asking their questions, and we'll just get whatever gets said and we'll share it. But that is part of it, right? There
So
isn't anybody else making the trip. There won't be any Houston reporters tomorrow night after the game asking any questions. And, unless anybody from St. Louis asks anything, we'll just get what the media team sends us.
well, look, and look, this is the double-edged sword, Victor, and we've got to move on soon to talk about another signing, a positive signing, Coco Carrasquilla signing. So we'll talk about that, and I promise we'll get to our Jersey conversation. But Victor, a part of this world is if the Dynamo and MLS are already feeding the media the resources, sound bites, and B-roll, what else do you need? If I'm a sports director somewhere, I'm saying, look, it's already here. We don't have to spend any money. Let's get someone to edit this, put it together, and we've done our job. So in many ways, that's a double-edged sword. That those assets are available, are spoon-fed to the media, versus someone independently looking into that. Is someone chasing down Hector Herrera right now and saying, "Hey, how are you doing? Where are you?" Is that happening? Is that a story that if C.J. Stroud were injured, would there not be questions?
Oh, no, you have all types of coverage already.
Every hour.
No, you wouldn't have, right. You wouldn't have what you have now with Herrera, where it's basically, okay, well, I guess we'll just see you whenever you come back then.
A completely different mindset and approach to that story. We're talking about comparable stars for their teams and leagues. Is that not fair?
Completely true. And again, it's just one team has that media attention and the other one doesn't. And I know a lot of it gets measured obviously in views and likes and certainly for the traditional media, the traditional mainstream media, maybe it's unfair if they measure it that way too, because again, if you're just going by what the team is sharing, well, everybody is going to have the same content. Nobody's going to have anything original. And again, is it worth going out, putting your own money, even if it's company money, right, to get an original story if maybe the audience isn't there? And we've had this debate where Houston's a soccer city, but does the soccer audience care about the Houston Dynamo? And yeah, we can be here all day on that.
Well, you made the point. Houston is a soccer city. Is it a Dynamo Dash city? That remains to be seen. So we're going to switch gears here a little bit, and this will help us transition to our next two topics. Victor, there is positive news because the Dynamo did sign Adalberto Carrasquilla, the Panamanian, who for many, he was on his way out to Europe, but he's made a signing. And if you look on screen right now, he's wearing in this beautiful photo the new jersey, the alternate jersey that has been unveiled in the past couple of days. And we'll talk about that shortly. But first, talk about Coco Carrasquilla wanting to stay in Houston. That's definitely a good news for the team.
It is. I've seen a lot of comments where it says, "Well, look, he's staying in Houston." It's almost like a stamp of like he's saying no to Europe, and I think that's the wrong narrative. I look at this more like a pay raise, which he absolutely deserves. He certainly has the talent. Because he has been one of the better players, independently of if he's in the best spot to help the team or not. And I think now that Herrera's out injured, maybe he'll go back to his natural position and we'll see that type of impact. But even based on what he had done already, to see a Corey Baird get paid more than he did last year, to me was unfair. Just leave it at that. Teenage Hadebe, also, getting paid way more than he was. And I think Carrasquilla brings more to the team than some of those other players. So maybe he's finally getting his just rewards. What does this mean for his European ambitions? They're not gone.
No.
And if the right offer is there, which, let's be honest, it hasn't been, then I think you'll see that negotiation. The Dynamo would certainly be interested in selling him if the price is right. But it also tells you that Carrasquilla's happy in Houston. He's spoken about it. He's spoken about, what it means to have this style of living for his family. And, I think the Europe thing isn't completely to the side, but if he's not going to a top league, I think it shows you that he's perfectly comfortable here in MLS, which isn't a bad thing, so long as you get the production out of it on the field.
25 years of age, he still has plenty of career per se, if you will. And at least for now, he will be here. And I think complementing Hector Herrera in that midfield very, very well. I think the moment, Victor, that we saw those two start to get along, not only on but off the field, connecting on the field. I think it gave a bit of freedom for Hector Herrera in the midfield to roam, to come back, to really be free, knowing he has someone that can support him and someone that can also support him defensively. Hector Herrera is not known as a defensive midfielder. I think it really adds another layer of competitiveness to the team, a key piece that returning only makes the team stronger. So we'll see if he remains happy, if he continues to be happy, which would be a good thing for everyone. Victor, I'm going to transition to now the jersey story, because this is something that I'm trying to better understand. I want to be fair in the way I present this, and it's really, and I'll say this from the offset, and I've actually got notes for once on this one, Victor, on the new launch, or the launch of the new Still Holden kit. I want to make sure I get my lingo down. I want to get my information. The launch took place a few days ago at Cactus Music, by the way, one of the traditional places for music in this city. I went to Cactus back in my college days when we still bought vinyl. Any of you remember what that is? Records, which are making a comeback, by the way, Victor. Did you know that?
Yeah. So I hear, yeah.
What is a record? I was not at the event. You were. What does a record cost these days? Do you know, an LP?
I wasn't able to get a look at. I wasn't paying attention to the prices, but I'm sure.
I was just wondering. One of my daughters, actually, who's a Swiftie, Taylor Swift fan, now has vinyl for this. So maybe it's making a comeback. 8-tracks will not be making a comeback. Yes, sir.
As part of their marketing efforts, I did like the personalized covers that they made for certain players, and I think that would make a good giveaway if they're able to print some of those and give them away.
So we continue, and we'll see where that goes. But Victor, let me, before we get into it, let me read some things so that you help me understand how we arrived at this. By the way, the jersey itself, and our producer here is going to help me here with some video shortly, is gorgeous. Nothing against the video. I'm sorry, on the video you're seeing the purple, the color. The color is beautiful, but help me understand here. I'm going to read a quote because I don't understand this, okay? It says, the Still Holding kit features candy paint purple, a prominent color in the local hip-hop scene, and a callback to the sunsets that reflect on Shell Energy Stadium. They talk about, Victor, something that I just don't understand. The color celebrates hip-hop culture, and the trademark, here's what I don't understand. Chopped and screwed sound synonymous with the city. So I'm an old man. I have no idea what that means. What is the chopped and screwed sound that's synonymous with Houston? And I've been in Houston since 1987. When did I miss this? When did that become synonymous with Houston? Chopped and screwed. That's what this press release reads. Can you? I'm ignorant.
Yeah,
what does this
mean? 90s Houston rap, early 2000s. I mean, maybe we just gotta make it a little bit more a man of culture. But I'm sure you've seen the customized cars on the streets of Houston. The flamboyant colors, the rims.
The ones that slow down traffic and break traffic laws? Those? Remember, I've seen the pack of motorcycles or bicycles that basically just slow everybody up, and there's no consequence to that. Again, I know I sound like an old man.
Not the bicycle. It's just the cars, and
okay.
There's certain where I guess events where they have them swerve on the street. You've seen the spoke wheels. It's all part of the. I'm
aware of it. Yes.
And maybe you've heard some of. Well, according to when we were talking, you hadn't heard some of this rap, but it's basically just slowed down rap. That's the chopped and screwed, and this is all part of the Houston rap culture. I always understood the purple to be for the purple drink, for lean, as it's called.
It's called what? The lean?
Lean.
Lean. Okay.
I always call you purple drank, which I guess it's the street name. I don't know. I'm sure there's others. Syrup. Basically, it's.
Victor, I'm going to interrupt you. Is this the same cultural references that Mattress Mac just came out with in some videos, and he's dressed like a hip hop
Yeah, and
artist.
the Gangsta Mac.
Okay,
That's him.
So that's the marketing that someone like Mattress Mac and the Dynamo are headed for, are headed to, are seeking to represent their team. It's a
Well, with
it's a
Mattress
very
Mac,
conscious effort, right?
it is. You know, in the sense of Mattress Mac, there was a meme or a painting that was made that he made into reality.
Okay.
It was Mattress Mac with a bandana, Gangsta Mac, and then he sort of made it into reality with
Gangsta Mac.
That's right.
Okay.
And he made it reality with I guess a skit, a video where he was making some of this purple drink, which is basically, he didn't show the cough syrup, so there is that. But it's cough syrup, Sprite, and then sometimes you throw in some Jolly Ranchers. You know, it sort of slows you down. Sometimes you do other drugs, but I mean, it's all in the songs too. I mean, it's not something that you can say it's independent. You know, maybe it's more of a wink, wink. Here, obviously the Houston Dynamo aren't alluding to it, but you know, I always. And I was talking to you. Maybe I've been desensitized to it. I always just, you know, it's part of it. You know, everybody has their personal preference. I'm not talking down on the color or the Houston rap culture, or even just, you know, again, this whole culture, which is sometimes dubbed Screwston, right? Because the chopped in screw comes from DJ Screw. So that's the nickname that sometimes Houston will have, is Screwston. And we've seen the purple, and there was actually, I think, and I don't know if it's the same designer, the same graphic designer as the Houston Dynamo. There was a Screwston FC, which had some purple Adidas customized jersey, sort of limited edition. I think that was sort of, you know, a hit with the niche of the audience. And I don't know if that's certainly where it stems from, but you know, now it's part of the identity of the Houston Dynamo. It's their alternate jersey for the next 2 seasons.
The jersey, as you see on screen, ladies and gentlemen, is beautiful. I mean, I really like the look.
And I will add,
yes,
it's not the only MLS team to lean into hip hop. Maybe not as as big and bold as this, but the New York Red Bulls had, I think, an ode to their hip hop culture with a recent jersey in Atlanta as well. And I believe those might be some of the better selling jerseys, at least for those teams. So maybe that's where some of the inspiration came as well.
And Victor, big and bold is good. I'm all into that. Make a decision, go with it. If certainly Alex Parra doesn't pretend to know Houston hip hop culture, far from it. I'm learning it. It's speaking more out of ignorance. But here is my question. My question is, Houston soccer culture is one thing. Houston hip-hop culture is another. Do they converge in some place? That's what I'm missing. If the Houston Dynamo are trying to draw just fans in general to the stadium to follow their product, I understand this. If they're trying to draw traditional soccer fans, that's another market. And I'm not being disrespectful, I hope, in my comment. So the Dynamo, with this alternate jersey, out of the infinite choices that they had, said, look, this is where we're going to put our eggs. That's a conscious decision. And is it because they feel that's a market they can tap into? Is it because it's a fad? And I equate it to my comment about Mattress Mac. Is that what the marketing folks out there are saying? Hey, everyone's doing this. Let's do it. I get it. They all get on the bandwagon. Someone must have pitched them this. And they said, yeah, this is where we're headed. This is our current identity for our alternate jersey. It's not everything that the Dynamo are. It's part of it. But it's a conscious effort to do that versus doing other things. That's fair.
But it's been a conscious effort for them for a couple of years now, and through different managements, because it's, I believe it started around the time of the rebrand with the Hold It Down, right?
Right.
So they've sort of been angling that way. They've had some rappers come out and do concerts at the stadium.
I know some of these. I met Paul Wall.
Yeah.
I met Paul Wall and Bunny B.
Yeah.
I met
Bun B.
I met the Bunny. So I'm aware of it. And yes, you can make fun of old man Alex. I'm stuck in the 80s. This is smarter minds than me. Smarter minds than mine, Victor, are still holding it.
Right. Well, here's the thing: if this jersey sells like hotcakes, then maybe, you know, it's that right there would be the the justification, perhaps at least for them economically. I think that's at least
Fair
the hope,
enough.
right? That they would get one of the better selling jerseys out of this. That you would think, and I mean, these things are not, the way MLS is now. These things aren't cheap. I think the authentic costs you just over 150 if you want name and number on the back, whether it's a player or you want it customized. It's $200 essentially, and I think the replica is
Wait, slow
just over
down,
100.
slow down. $200 for any jersey or this jersey in particular?
Any jersey.
Wow.
Whichever one you're buying now. I mean, that's what they're cost.
Did they let you hold and touch one, or we weren't allowed?
They did not. I guess they thought I was going to.
I
guess they were thought of.
In fairness, I wasn't at the event. Were others allowed to touch it? You weren't?
I mean, you can grab it in the team shop and
No. For free. No, we're not going to pay to hold it.
I suppose you can hold in the team shop, and as long as you don't leave with it, that's probably as good as it gets.
Now you're getting to the bottom line, Victor. Regardless of how you justify the brain blast behind the creation, and it's perfectly justifiable, apparently. I'm just ignorant, apparently, of the chopped and screwed sound synonymous with the city. I go back to that because I had no idea until I read this press release what that was. So I'm fully ignorant. But the bottom line is dollars. Sell those jerseys.
Listen, and it's been controversial, at least from everything I read online, because it's, some people have brought it up. Other people have come to the defense of the team where it doesn't signify lean. If you want to make that connection, that's a you problem. That's essentially what they're saying. But, they steer more towards the rap culture. But I mean, I put it because maybe this is more has to do with my generation, right? And I grew up with this music. So I always understood it, right? That it goes without saying that that's what the purple is for.
Sure.
You see him in the album covers, you hear it in the songs. The Dynamo, and it is a thin line, I think, to try to navigate.
So,
look, Mattress Mac got criticized in comments. I think he had to take that video down. The Houston Chronicle wrote an opinion piece about it, or at least just documenting it. They haven't written one about the Houston Dynamo, and I wouldn't expect one because I'm sure Mattress Mac gets some more hits than the Houston Dynamo. But again, if the Houston Dynamo had that type of attention, I think they'd probably be criticized as well. I've seen some posts by fans online where they think this is a glorification of the drug culture, and they don't agree with this, and they, in essence, disgusted that the team is going in this direction.
Sure.
when they're, again, choose not to go the soccer route. And you see some of the jerseys around the league. San Jose, the Earthquakes tapped into their history with an old Earthquakes jersey with the old logo. Orlando City tapped into their USL history with the old USL logo. The Seattle Sounders made an anniversary jersey for one of the better jerseys, I think, that came out of this recent release of jerseys. When the Houston Dynamo, want to go in this direction, which it's a thin line because, again, no other Houston team has gone all in on the purple, and we'll see where it goes with Houston.
Well,
but I think it does come with controversy.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, Victor, everything has controversy. Someone's going to look at our show today and say, I don't like the way that old man is dressed. He should change and wear one of the purple jerseys. So criticism comes with almost anything if you put yourself out there. So I get that. Now, what I don't understand, and I go back to it, is all in on something that someone says is synonymous with the city, okay? By the way, there's this little thing called the rodeo that's about to go off for the next month. The rodeo is synonymous with the culture of this city, and it has nothing to do with purple or this jersey or the chopped and screwed sound.
Well, Bun B's been doing a couple of concerts for 3 years now, I think.
Fair enough. No.
It's a Houston hip-hop celebration.
Well, they have a night for that, but I mean, the culture around the rodeo, is my point, is synonymous with our city. Latino culture is synonymous with our city. So there are so many things that are synonymous with our city depending on your perspective and your point of view. This is someone's perspective. I'm respectful of that. Now, what you have said also disturbs me as an older person, and I'm involved with youth soccer. If this in any way is connected to a drug culture, to a culture of abuse of women, of bad language, I don't think that's a good look for anyone, Victor. And I'm not saying that is or isn't. You grew up in this genre of music certainly more than I have. I don't understand it. I don't take its merit away as an artistic way to express. Not at all. But if there are tinges of these kind of things, sexism, drug use in almost every genre of music, right? So we can't also be blanket. That exists in country music. That exists in heavy metal. It exists in many places. So it's not this is the only genre that may have that. My only question is, if somebody tapped into something that's synonymous with the city, I just hope it was done after some research and some thought. But I also understand generationally, things have changed. Old men like me are stuck in the 80s. We don't need to know or are aware of what's happening. And this is the new generation. And maybe that's the right decision. And you said it, Victor. If they can sell at $160 to $200 a pop these jerseys, that's success.
That'll be success to them. And again, I think it'll be a story to follow over the next, for sure this season and maybe next, depending on, because this jersey is going to be here for 2 seasons. The way MLS does it is they only change one jersey per team. And that jersey sticks around for 2 years. And I know they probably wanted to go a different direction than the traditional black jerseys they've used in the last 4 seasons, I should say, if I'm correct. But, it does ruffle some feathers. It does bother some people. It maybe brings unwanted attention, and we'll see how they handle it, because I think at some point, the biggest thing to me, again, I tell you, to me, it just goes without saying what the purple stands for. And, we spoke, off camera, and I had to sort of explain it to you. And you're not the only one.
You did have to explain it to me. Yeah.
And you're not the only one that I've had to, in the Dynamo community, have to sort of, explain this to a little bit. And I've gotten, some weird reaction where it's like, well, hold on. So what is this again? And maybe it's like, well, it's a nice jersey, but maybe I'm not going to buy it. Maybe I'll stay away from this one. So, and again, and this is people like yourself that have lived in the city for a long time, maybe just not introduced to this culture.
You're calling us veterans. You're calling us old. Thank you.
So I'm just wondering if there's people inside the organization, because we know there's not enough Houstonians in there, that maybe haven't realized this yet and maybe are about to. And that maybe raises a bigger question of where the management of this organization is.
Maybe the last point, Victor, because we've got to move on here with our agenda. So you go back and you mentioned to me someone called DJ Screw. So DJ Screw is behind the Screwston. The Screwston.
Yeah, well, that's where the style. That's where the style
okay.
comes. But obviously, there's several local Houston artists that use this type of.
The chopped and screwed. We go back to that Screwston,
right?
And DJ Screw.
And if it doesn't have to necessarily be the slow rap. You have some local artists, right? Again, you mentioned Bun B, Paul Wall, Mike Jones, who does the Houston Dynamo song. That was taped, I think, back in like 2007. So, I think like in any demographic in Houston, there's going to be a crossover between Dynamo fans and every community in Houston. I think the issue here, and as some fans have pointed this out, is to go all in on wanting to be, and maybe this is their strategy to go into the general sports scene, right? To be there alongside with the Astros and the Rockets and the Texans, because they're certainly part of the fan base that crosses over there. And I think maybe the Dynamo are trying to find their space in that. Is it the right approach? I don't know, because I also think the Dynamo have a certain advantage that no other sport in the city has. And it's the most famous, or it's the most popular sport in the world. And when you have, the product itself, and you're not trying to just go after soccer fans first and foremost, that's probably the bigger issue we should be talking about here, as well as why is it all in on the Houston rap culture.
Look, it's a very interesting story more than anything because of the
more than anything
story
because
behind.
they're not filling up the stadium as well.
And again, is this part of a master plan in order to fill up the stadium? Because this approach to the chopped and screwed sound synonymous with the city will allow fans now, more fans, to get to experience the product that is MLS. Someone smarter than me is making this decision. So we will keep up with it, though.
We'll see.
Beautiful jersey.
Maybe we just need to bring out the gangsta Alex in you.
Gangsta. Maybe I'll do the what is it, the bandana to cover up the baldness with
think
with
of it like Prison Mike in The Office.
Is that it?
If you watch The Office.
I'm sorry. No, now I know the reference you're talking about. I thought you meant in our office. I'm not like, wait a minute, what's he talking about?
No. Prison Mike, he wears a purple bandana.
I think I'm aware of it. I don't know if that's necessarily the best look for Alex Parra. Victor, we got to move on.
Right.
A lot still to talk about. And another side of this organization is the Houston Dash. We were at the welcome press conference for Fran Alonso, who showed up. Finally, after dealing with some visa issues, he seems like a pleasant man. He seems like someone that's very excited to be here. He brings energy, pun intended. That's one of the words that was used at the press conference. And his story is just amazing. Someone that loves the sport so much that he's worked his way up and now has this great opportunity leading the Dash in the NWSL.
That's right. Started with the cleaning crew, transitioned over to translator and assistant, and just climbing the ladder, chasing a dream. But again, and he started working now. He's gotten some friendlies, I think, out of the way. We have to see what this means once they get started playing. Are the results going to be there? The challenges of him going from, he said it himself, coaching amateurs, part-timers, to having, what's a professional sports team, and what he considers one of the top leagues in the world, probably the top league in the world, and the National Women's Soccer League. Let's see how it goes. Again, I think we wish him the best, but it's gonna be a transition, and certainly at the beginning here because of the Women's Gold Cup. No Maria Sanchez, no Diana Ordóñez, no Jane Campbell, among others.
Exactly. Those international commitments are going to deplete the team, and we'll see what Alonso can do with the club. But we wish him the best. Again, he seems like a very pleasant and educated and knowledgeable coach. So again, the beginning of a new era, beginning again. We've gone through 3 eras in 3 years for the Dash. Actually, 4 head coaches. 4 coaches in 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, including an interim.
Several interims, I think. You had Sarah Loudon there, and you had Juan Carlos Amoros was an interim as well. So yeah, it's been a lot of turnover for the Houston Dash.
And now with the Dash, they're coming up with preseason friendlies. There's a match coming up against the University of Texas at Houston Sports Park. It may be open to some fans. Victor, to me, that's one of those matchups against a solid, very good Longhorn team. I was lucky enough to broadcast one of the Big 12 matches against U of H this season. What a tremendous team. I'm curious to see how they do against the Dash, the professional side. To me, that should be open to the public. Why so many close scrimmages? I get that as a coach, and I pretended to be one, I'm not quite ready yet to show my first team. But at some point, back to the fans. Wouldn't fans, soccer fans, love to watch University of Texas Longhorns against the Houston Dash? You put that at the Shell, sell tickets for half price, and with just enough Longhorn alum, you'll have 5,000 people there. Am I crazy?
Well, I hope you have 5,000 people. That's probably more than they get to games. But I agree with you. I think fans want to be part of some of these events. I think if you organize them, if It's like the saying: if you build it, they will come. I think if you organize it, they'll make their way out there. And again, every time you do one of these, it's an opportunity to strengthen that connection with the fan base. Maybe they feel they have to look the part of a professional team, and that's why they got to do these closed doors, scrimmages. I'll tell you, up to a certain, maybe a few years ago, all the trainings were open to media, 100%. Go in there, get all the footage you want. From a certain point to where we are now, it's the same as the Dynamo, where it's 15 minutes open only. And obviously, we see professional teams in Europe where they have open trainings and they allow fans to come in. Everybody does it a different way. To me, I think maybe part of it is privacy, maybe part of it is just looking the part of a professional team. But I agree, when you have, and unless I'm mistaken, unless these are NWSL mandated rules or just part of the deal with the NWSL Players Association, perhaps that has some part to play in it. But I don't think anything negates you from making as much of these fan events as possible, and I agree, it's all part of the growing the game.
Victor, forgive me for interrupting you. I think that's a fair question to ask both organizations. Why the 15-minute rule? And look, I'm going to be kind in the way I present this. For an organization and a team that needs coverage, to me, you need to facilitate that coverage. In some ways, they're already doing it by sending out video and sound bites that are ready for the media. They're ready and accessible. Those resources are there, but I don't see how you lose anything, certainly in certain training sessions when you're doing certain drills that really are not revealing anything. Look, I have this conversation with you, with Don Enrique Vasquez, about the Texans, that you can't shoot certain aspects of Houston Texans NFL practice because you might reveal a secret. Literally, I've been told, sitting in the stadium of NRG, looking toward the bubble, that no one can shoot an image that way. To me, that's ridiculous. There's nothing that someone can gain from a report locally that you might have 15 seconds of video that someone can tap into and get an advantage over. So that's ridiculous to me, 100%. It's also ridiculous to me for some teams that need exposure, that want media, that want to get out there. I would even have a contest, and I would have the 15 best fans to come and watch an entire practice and sit them down and give them free everything, including the new purple jersey, and have them endear themselves to that team. But again, you said it, and I think maybe you said it tongue in cheek, maybe you didn't, pretending to be a real team. Victor, if you open those doors up, this is going to be a tough statement, and I hope I'm not being too hard on these teams. You could open those doors, tear down those fences, and you might still get 6 people there. So people are not trying to run over that facility to watch practice.
No, exactly. And there's been people that have tried that whenever Messi's in town, or maybe even when Mexico's in town.
Sure.
Again, it shows you the different level of interest. If they were the Houston Texans, right, and it was going to be a distraction if 300 people show up uninvited, you can understand, right, why some of these things are in place. But again, when you need the coverage, and I go back to it again, it's just one of those things where we compare it to the old days at Robertson Stadium. The trainings used to be at Carl Lewis
Yes.
at UH, and all of them were open. Fans can go in and watch, or they're training at the stadium. They go in and watch. I walked in one time. Brad Davis punched Andrew Ano. There was a little scuffle there in training, and I'm sure those are the kinds of things that they don't want to come out of training, right? Just a few, beginning, I think, one of the first trainings of the year. Now that there's rumors out there about Escobar potentially going to enter Miami, I believe we witnessed there Escobar and Olsen having a couple of exchange of words, right? And maybe
Sure.
we came away with the assumption that Escobar's not wanting to play left back this season. And these are the things that sort of come out of these open sessions. And I think these are the things they want to avoid, and that plays partly into it. But again, when you're an organization that needs the attention, you got to do everything you can to get fan engagement, right? And if it's inviting fans to practice, but again, this is something that goes all the way to the top. If the owner wants them to be more accessible, the team has to be more accessible.
Sure.
But if you're going to let the players and general managers dictate the rules of how accessible your team is going to be, well, we've seen this story before. 2017, they had a similar successful season like they did last year. 2017, 2018, if we want to include that Open Cup title. That was one of the most closed-off Dynamos that we've seen. And that was one that, again, lost a lot of the fan base for the same reason of not being open, not wanting to do media, not wanting to take part in fan events, and we feel the repercussions of it still.
Intriguing this season. We'll see what happens. I go back to it. To me, it's simple. Open it up for fans. Make it a fan experience. It doesn't have to be 15 minutes. There's no secrets there. They're going to change the world. And even Ben Olsen and Pat Olmstead will tell you that. I don't think there's a secrecy. Maybe, Victor, and we'll look to clarify that. It's league-mandated rules, and that's the Pontius Pilate. That I can't do anything about it. So maybe that's a reason behind it. Victor, we have to move on. This week, a lot happening, obviously, with the start of the Dynamo FC season on Saturday versus Sporting Kansas City. But in Shell, there'll be a few games before that of the CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup, an event that's coming to our city.
That's right. And it's about time that we have a women's competition here in the region. We obviously have the Gold Cup for a long time here. That's the men's version. And you know, for my taste, it should be every 4 years, like the Euro and like the Copa America, but and that gets called a cash grab. But on the women's side, we haven't even had it, and it's crazy to me that, you know, we're over 30 years removed from the first Women's World Cup, and CONCACAF is finally getting a women's competition. So better late than never, I suppose. And again, maybe part of it is the lack of attention to the women's game, the lack of interest, maybe at the gate, but just like, you know, it is in the NCAA, just like it is with FIFA. You know, the games or the sports that make you the most money sometimes offset or provide the funding for some of these other competitions. And that's why, you know, we see it at the youth levels. It's about time we see it at the senior women's level. Yeah,
I'm excited about this tournament coming to Shell. Tell us a little bit more about some of the teams, Victor, that will be participating. I know that El Salvador just qualified. We're watching some of the highlights of I believe their final match that got him into this group of 4 that will be playing out of Shell Energy.
Yes, there was a qualification process, just like the CONCACAF Nations League for the men's, where there was 3 separate leagues. There was a qualification process for the women. It was called the Road to the W Gold Cup. And El Salvador was one of the teams in League B that won their groups, that got into the preliminaries. They ended up facing Guatemala. The preliminaries were just last week here, or over the last couple of days over in LA. And just to fill the 3 last spots in each group, we get Group C, which, as we now know, has El Salvador and Brenda Seren, who is the younger sister of former Houston Dynamo Darwin Seren, but she's also El Salvador's best player. She scored a hat-trick in that game. Technically gifted, so they'll be fun to watch. We're going to see how many of the La Selecta fans will get out at Shell Energy Stadium. Canada's also in that group. So obviously the Canadian national team, one of the better ones in the region. We've also always had that sort of Houston-Canada connection. And the 2 other teams, Costa Rica. So we'll have 2 Latino teams in this group. And then, 3 actually, because, and this is maybe the part that
Paraguay, you were talking about Paraguay.
Paraguay, yeah, because we have invitations out to other confederations, but you know, maybe this will make the tournament stronger, and at least for the teams in the region to have a better challenge. But yeah, Paraguay is in there. They could potentially be the champions of CONCACAF if they go on to win the whole thing.
So looking at Group C, who do you expect to be coming out of Houston? Probably the Canadian team?
Probably Canada. They have you would think they have the better talent, even if they are in a bit of a transition, because, you know, maybe not Sinclair anymore, but you would think they still have plenty of talent and plenty of players, elite players that should have them first in the group. After that, maybe Costa Rica or El Salvador, one of those two. I think that's probably the expectation. The second best third place teams, I believe, are the ones that sort of get ranked, and then only two, like the two best, or maybe it's the two best third places. I'm mistaken, and so maybe we'll actually have three teams.
Yeah, we're looking quickly.
Those are the three teams I would say.
Yeah, so we're quickly looking at the group stage. A total, if I'm not mistaken by my math, of 12 teams, 4 in each group, Group A, B, and C. Out of that, 8 will qualify out to the quarterfinals. Obviously, then we go to knockout rounds, semifinals, and final, which will take place March 10th at the Snapdragon Stadium. So you can see that on your screens there.
Yeah. So the top two teams in each group advance, and then the second best third place teams. So
got it. Out of any of the three groups, correct.
Out of any of the three groups.
The strongest group to me, of course, would be Group A, right? USA, Mexico, Argentina, and República Dominicana.
Right, because you have at least you have the U.S. So that's
US,
one
right.
that obviously the favorite to win the entire thing. But Mexico should in
come
theory,
out of that group,
have a good group. But we saw it, I think, in the World Cup qualification that they've had trouble. So nothing's for sure for Mexico.
So anyway, so tell us about the matches here, Victor. At Shell Energy, we'll have 3 days of matches, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Thursday we'll have Costa Rica and Paraguay, and then we'll have Canada or El Salvador at the as a headliner. A couple of days after that, on the 25th, Paraguay and Canada, and then El Salvador, Costa Rica will headline. So that's where we'll get the Central American countries. Maybe we'll see if the fans come out there for that rivalry. And then the last day will be the 28th. That's Canada, Costa Rica, and then Paraguay, El Salvador will be the headliner. So El Salvador in the tail end of each of these doubleheaders, not Canada, which you would think would be the headliner just based on talent alone, but obviously they're betting big on the La Selecta fans coming out of show.
And finally, Victor, on the Gold Cup, where can we find out more information if people want to attend? I've seen already reduction of tickets. I'm being honest, that's what I saw on social media. But this is a great opportunity to see national teams, women's national teams here in our city. And I bet you, with the weather, it'll be a nice evening to catch some of the best of CONCACAF women's national teams.
Yes, obviously CONCACAF.com, but we'll have some stuff on Deportes Nation as well for anybody wanting information on that tournament.
And I think we close with this, Victor. Let's look forward to the opening on Saturday, the 24th, of another Houston Dynamo season. What are you looking for this Saturday when Houston Dynamo FC receive Sporting Kansas City? By the way, a matchup of the Western Conference Finals, semifinals.
Semifinals, yeah, and obviously a rivalry, long-time rivalry between Sporting and Houston. Home opener here, which is usually what the Dynamo get, because maybe being more in the South, more often than not, Houston get to host in the opening week. And for a long time, it used to be a sellout, which I think we haven't really seen much of the build-up here, but hopefully we see a good crowd out there. And for the sake of the Dynamo, they see 3 points, because I think it'll be a difficult season without Hector Herrera. Obviously, Nelson Quiñones now you don't have in the attack. Bassi is not here for the foreseeable future until gets that sorted out. So we're certainly there'll be some challenges here early, and we'll see what the scope of the team is.
Well, a lot to look forward to this week. So please stay with us as we bring you coverage on Deportes Nation of all of this, of the dash, of the Houston Dynamo FC, of the Women's Gold Cup, and much more soccer action. And Victor, we will continue to talk about different topics related to our soccer world here on the Deportes Nation, the soccer podcast. So on behalf of Victor Araiza, my partner in crime, I'm Alex Parra. We want to thank all of you that follow us, that tolerate us here on Deportes Nation. And until next time, when we bring you this Deportes Nation, the soccer podcast.